want to say a few words. So I've been at Fortune for 26 years, and I am looking to spread my wings. And honestly, one of the areas that fascinates me most right now, and an area that I want to learn more about and get into career-wise, is this entrepreneurial world. And I think with the world changing so fast and so unpredictably as it is today, you know, one of the, I remember Jeff Immelt at GE saying to me, maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago, that one of the most important things that you need to do as a CEO is see around corners. Well, you can't see around corners anymore. And the real, I think, most important characteristic of leadership, one of them is flexibility and agility and adaptability today. And, you know, so I've come to know some entrepreneurs very well. I mean, I have a history of writing about them. I mean, I did a couple of Ted Turner cover stories over the years. I've done cover stories about Oprah and Martha Stewart and, you know, and I've always, you know, entrepreneurs just operate from the gut, and they're really interesting journalistically. But, you know, talk about people who have to be adaptable and who, you know, don't plan out the way Fortune 500 companies do. And I just, this is, long story short, my point is that I think more than ever, Fortune 500 companies have to think like entrepreneurs. So I think that's one of the reasons that I'm so fascinated and believe that people who are used to covering business and are in big business really have a lot to learn from you guys. So, kudos to you. One of the things that I'm always curious about with anyone who is successful is where they came from. And I would actually like to start out by asking each of you what you wanted to do when you were 10 years old. What did you want to grow up to be?
So, my name is Catherine. I'm going to be a senior at the University of Pennsylvania next year. So I think, this is a little bit hard to remember, when I was 10, I think I somehow heard about, you know, some top schools, some top business schools, and I actually wanted to be a banker when I was 10 years old, I think. But that's since changed since I've come to business school and realized there's a lot more out there than just banking and numbers. But I think at 10, that's kind of what I was looking at.
It's unusual.
Very unusual.
Is there anything particularly unusual about any of your childhoods or growing up, or you know, your family structure? You know, like if one of you told me, I know you're an only child, but oh, I'm one of 10. I'm oldest of 10 kids, or whatever. Anything interesting there? And also, bearing in mind what you wanted to do when you were 10 years old, what did your parents tell you to do, or guide you to do?
Okay, I'll start. So I think one particular thing about my childhood is that my family immigrated from China. You know, my parents immigrated my dad first when I was about 2, so I was actually born in China. And one thing that I realized is he was able to accomplish all that he could, and same with my mom, was actually through education. And so that's why, you know, with Givology, we are an organization that's focused on education. And, you know, for me, seeing it firsthand on how they could go from, you know, what they had in China to what we have now, what they're able to give me now, is just one of the most incredible things. And that's really why, you know, I'm so passionate about education and Givology, because, you know, it's really the tool out there for anything development-wise in any country, and it's really the long-term solution. So seeing it firsthand and how much my family emphasized education was just an incredible thing, and instilled those values in me.
I'm not going to give each of you of your businesses in the context of kind of how you were guided by your parents as you were growing up.
Well, I think my parents had extremely huge faith. I remember when I was 13 years old, I just burned into my mind that I have to be a car designer. And, you know, I started to draw cars on paper, but actually my father already knew that I have no talent for that totally. but it's interesting that however, my father told that to me, but he saw that it doesn't matter that he tells this to me, but I still want to be a car designer. So they always supported me in everything what I started to do. Today also, my father is the CEO. So
Ever write a business plan? So who'd you get your money from?
So we did have a business plan, but just going back to what Daniel was saying, you very quickly learn that you need to throw that out. And the best use of the business plan is for your own edification if you're doing sort of lower tech stuff, at least from my experience. So a deck and an executive summary was sufficient, not necessarily a 10, 15-page business plan.
Okay, now?
25.
And where did you go to college?
Sorry?
Where did you go to college?
Well, actually, I was for 1.5 months in university. It was the University of Engineering in Budapest. But this was just 1.5 months because I didn't have time for university.
We've all figured out what you're good at. What aren't you good at? And how did you deal with that? In terms of either, and I mean this is a question that I often ask like CEOs of big companies. What is the thing that they've had to work on throughout their career to become better at? And some say patience, some say focus. So go there. What have you had to work on?
Hiring. Getting good people is very difficult, and I think everyone here has touched on it already, that it's really all about team. It's not just the work that's being accomplished and the sort of efficiency of that process, but also the enjoyment thereof. And if you're working with someone that you really don't like, you're not going to enjoy the experience of doing the project. I very quickly found out that I wasn't the best at hiring when I started out, and I had some unfortunate experiences. But then I quickly iterated and realized that there are things that you can do and things you can look out for to improve that experience. And by the same token, if you do that with everything, obviously you won't be great at everything, but I've been able to unearth some knowledge about things that I otherwise wouldn't have known about just by iterating and engaging in a lot of different things and engaging with a lot of different people and getting a lot of different perspectives.
Be here because we want hurdles. We want like your worst challenge, your worst day, something that you didn't think you were going to get through. Ben's dying to talk here.
So for me, the worst probably happened last year. 2 weeks into my first semester at MIT, the recession is like full on, in full force. And when I started school, I anticipated closing a deal for $1.25 million. And 2 weeks later, all that money was suddenly gone. Investors weren't picking up the phone as if they didn't exist anymore. I had another investor who put $500K in, and then I ended up having to give the $500K back. And I just lost. I anticipated raising a whole bunch more money. Everything was supposed to be set up, and I was going to be able to focus on school. Suddenly, it's like, holy shit, my world's falling apart. What am I going to do? And I basically stopped going to class to raise the money I needed, because I made all these plans. I signed a lease for an office, I hired people, and suddenly I couldn't pay them anymore. And I had to start from scratch, raising all the money again. And I did it in probably one of the worst times economically, and I was able to raise it at a very high valuation still. And that was one of the toughest things I've had to go through in a while.
Got it. Well, without getting into the details, what's the lesson about, okay, so you didn't go with your gut, you shouldn't have trusted this person, but what beyond that can you share in terms of sort of advice?
Which actually isn't something that you should really look at necessarily, because it's not about how long it takes, but rather the quality. But with him, it was really, really slow. And it was clear that he had some experience, but he wasn't really in a position to manage the code base, which is really what I needed someone to do, is really be that technical lead that you could trust 100%. And if you don't have someone that you can trust 100%, you're going to go drive yourself crazy and start micromanaging, and then it's even worse than having someone who's not effective, because you're making yourself ineffective as well.